And now please welcome Paige Reitz.
Recovery is hard. Recovery is messy. Recovery is not linear. Recovery looks different for everyone. It does not look like a cure, and it does not always mean an abatement of symptoms. It often means learning to manage symptoms through lifestyle changes, coping skills, sometimes therapy, sometimes medication, often a combination of all of the above. I consider myself in recovery from self-harm, and yet I still struggle with urges to self-harm every single day. Recovery is not always pretty, and it hasn't been for me. In my experience, recovery has been like recovery from any other addictive behavior or addiction to substance. I am triggered by feelings as wide-ranging as boredom, anxiety, anger, sadness, but also, paradoxically, joy and happiness sometimes. When I first started self-harming at 15, I did so when I was feeling particularly anxious, depressed, overwhelmed. As the addiction grew, I began self-harming to sleep at night, and then it was every night. And then it was a tool carried in my bag, just in case, and another in my car for the same reason. It was hours spent at Rite Aid looking at first aid supplies. It was cutting when I was sad, anxious, bored, happy, angry, confused. It was any feeling that was strong or any time I didn't have any feeling at all. It was secrecy and long-sleeve shirts and long pants in July. It was red washes of shame when my scars showed. It was 3 psychiatric hospitalizations inside of 18 months where I learned new ways of hurting myself, more than I ever learned new ways of coping in healthier ways. It was years of therapists who tried to help me when I refused to be helped. It was self-sabotage and self-hatred at its core. It was asking my therapist to contract me to safety because I wanted help, but then making the contract intentionally vague so I could avoid asking for help in the moment. It was needing more help, targeted help, and not knowing that it existed or how to ask for it. It was miserable, and it was comfortable. It was a security blanket when my security blanket had long since stopped serving that purpose. It was seductive, a siren call, often when things were going well, but always when things were going south. It was stop and start, with months when I managed to stop, only to be blindsided by what felt like an unbearable urge where only the ritual of cutting would do. It was in graduate school that I finally got serious about stopping, that I finally decided that I wanted and needed to stop cutting in order to be an effective social worker. I could not tell teenagers that they couldn't cut themselves when I was doing the same. I started going to individual and group therapy, and I used my group therapy to hold myself accountable. I began exploring aspects of myself in therapy that I had never touched before. I got back on medications, the right medications at the right doses. I learned who I was, and I learned to begin the arduous task of learning to love myself. And I still slipped up. First, it was every month or so, then every couple of months. Then, finally, the month I graduated, I committed full stop. I have been successful for almost 3 years, and it has been hard. It is stressful, and it is difficult, and it is awfully tempting every single day. Most often when I'm driving, which is my gratitude because at least I'm distracted, but at times when I'm trying to sleep, as self-harm helped me do so long ago. It is mostly my self-harm thoughts are fleeting, easy to ignore, easy to ride out now. But when emotions are running high, when things feel like they are spiraling out of control, often it feels impossible, and I have to use the skills like breathing and positive mantras and distraction that I cultivated along my path to pull myself out of the tempest. I look at the tattoo that I got when I was 18 months self-harm free, a tattoo that for me symbolizes hope and change and growth, a tattoo that reminds me that hope can be found in the darkest of places if only one remembers to turn on the light, and that it is our choices, far more than our abilities, that show us who we are. Feelings of powerlessness still threaten to overwhelm me on a semi-regular basis. I have been sorely tempted and struggled with what sometimes feels like instinct or need. And yet I survive. I survived those feelings of fear and powerlessness and anger and anxiety and sadness. I have surfed those waves of feelings when I felt like I might drown, and I am able to be kind to myself instead. I survive, and I can do this, and I will keep doing this, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I'm so grateful that I have come this far. Recovery is messy, and it is worth it. Recovery is not perfect, and it never will be. My recovery will probably look like being triggered at least some of the time for most of the rest of my life, and that's okay. Recovery will probably look like intermittent therapy to get back on kilter, and that's okay. Recovery is a lifelong journey, and I am grateful to be taking it. Thank you.